InRavio.com wants you. InRavio provides the best in TV, film, post-production, and so much more. And we're growing. Right now, we're looking for a team of pros that can join us. So what are you waiting for? We need show hosts, production crew, marketing gurus, sales experts, audio engineers, lighting, visual effects, and camera crews. We want you. Go to InRavio.com/join the team.
Hey, this is Chris and Jake, and if InRavio.com spots you at an event wearing this bracelet, they will give you $100.
Welcome to Nerdgasm, and look who is joining me today. It's been forever and a day that this guy has been on the show with us, DJ Winchell.
Hi.
Hey, buddy. What you up to, pal? What's been going on? So fill us in. You haven't been on the show since May?
I did the Long Island Shakespeare Festival. That finished, and I've been working on some stuff.
Like your tan. You've been working on your tan.
Well, I got a job at a beach club, so I've been, I'm really white too, so this is like after one day.
This is as dark as I have ever seen you.
This is as dark as I'll ever get.
So, now let's catch up on everything, like summer movies. We haven't had you in here for, we haven't had you like in the studio. We had you Skype in the other week.
Yeah.
And somehow your hair has grown back since then. You had like a little buzz cut. What was going on with that little buzz cut that you were
Oh, it was for the
sporting?
show. I had the mohawk. That was for the show. I played a Scottish warrior, and I had to have like a warrior-like haircut. So that was what they did. So they shaved the sides of my head, and I had blue face paint on, and I killed a bunch of people. It was very satisfying.
Okay, so, which play are you talking about?
Henry IV, Part 1.
Get the hell out of here. That's pretty amazing, man.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to have you back. You haven't even been on the set. What do you make of this new BBC set we have?
It's lovely.
It's like it's set on like the old Star Trek TV show.
I feel like I'm on The View.
Yeah. You know, like the old Star Trek TV show from the 60s, they had like the very blank backgrounds that were
What,
colorful.
on the Enterprise, when they were sitting on the Enterprise?
Not on the Enterprise. When they would go to a foreign planet, this is what the horizon
This is
would look like.
the throne rooms they would have. That was clearly a set in someone's living room.
Yeah, look, we got the big container behind.
The vases. Some exotic plant needs to be growing out of it.
So, pal, you know what we're going to do right now?
What are we going to do right now?
We're going to catch up on some summer movies.
Okay, just going to read off the list and tell me what I think of them?
No, pretty much. But first you're going to tell me what you saw. You left the last program you did, I think we talked about Captain America, but since
I saw
then,
Captain America. Yeah, we talked about that already, though.
All right, so we talked about it, but we haven't talked about the other stuff.
Okay.
And I believe you saw Sin City 2.
I saw it today, actually.
Okay, great, because I haven't. And the audience needs to know just how this film is.
I loved it.
Okay.
It was awesome. I like that stuff, though. I was a big fan of the first one. A lot of people complained that it was a little slow, but I didn't see that at all. I liked the characters are good. I mean, the actors are great. You've got such a star-studded cast. I mean, there's Jeremy Piven's in it at one point too. So is Christopher Maloney. Lady Gaga pops up at one point in like a small role, which is actually pretty good. And it Rosario Dawson's good as always. Josh Brolin's just I'm Josh Brolin. I'm a badass. That's the whole thing. That's great. It's awesome. So you're Mickey Rourke. I'm pretty sure that's just Mickey Rourke being Mickey Rourke up there. As Marv. But it was great. It was awesome. I love the way those movies are shot. I love that comic book. Frank Miller actually wrote like two stories for this movie. So they did two from the comic book, actual from the comic book, and then the other ones are actually stories he wrote for this film. And they're actually I think they'll be turning them into graphic novels soon to kind of complete the set.
Now, is there anything that's in the movie that is already based on an existing comic?
Yeah, the whole Dame the Kill For story. The whole story with Josh Brolin is from the Dame the Kill For comic.
Hence the namesake of the film.
Yeah, exactly. And that's probably the bulk of the storyline is that story. That's the big chunk of the movie is that whole thing with Josh Brolin and the Dame the Kill For.
Now, I haven't seen the new one, but as I stated before, it's getting a lot of flack from people. Aside from pacing issues, what do you think that's about?
I don't know. I got to be honest with you. I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's very noir-esque, like it's very in the vein of those movies, and I'm a big fan of that stuff. So that's awesome.
How is it different from the first one?
In what sense? What do you mean?
Like, how does it compare to the first one?
It's on the same level, in my opinion. I mean, the first one's a little more broken up. This isn't as broken up as the first. You know how in the first one they had like segments for stuff?
Yeah.
Where it'd be like, it would be like Marv's story, and then there's Hardigan with Bruce Willis, and then there's the story with Dwight, all that. This is kind of follows a little more of a linear, kind of intertwines everything, you know, but it's not as broken up as the previous film. Whereas the first one was like 3 or 4 short films, this is like one whole movie. All the characters interacting in the world of Sin City.
Okay, but what's the deal with Marv was, to my understanding,
This story takes place before The Hard Goodbye.
The whole thing.
They did. Hard Goodbye is one of their more famous ones, so they did that one first. That's the most famous, the one that's loved the most is that Hard Goodbye story. But all this stuff takes place before Marv, this is all before that. So it's technically a prequel.
So now, what are we talking about? Scale of 1 to 10. What are we giving it?
I give about an 8. Yeah, I'll give that about an 8 because I like, you know, as far as comic book film goes, it jumps off the page. And I'm a huge fan. So if you're a huge fan of the Sin City comics and you like film noir, then you'll love it. But if you don't, then I don't know. Go see How to Train Your Dragon 2 because I really got nothing for you.
By the way, good eyes, chat room. I did put my hat on backwards, and I think the man in the control room called me an idiot, if I heard things correctly. Okay, so now before we have our guests on and commercial break, I got to ask you about the other film that you saw, which was? Now we talked about it. We talked ahead of time, but we're going to review. I was going to have you review 2 films.
Okay.
Sin City, and the other one that you saw like 4 or 5 times. No, 3, maybe.
Guardians?
No, not Guardians. The other film that you saw this summer. Audience, what was it? I can't remember. It was like we talked about. Matt, what is the other graphic that I gave you? It's Sin City Expendables 3.
Yeah, Expendables is awesome. I love that stuff, though. I love the whole concept of these movies. The whole concept of these movies is genius. The problem, I think, nowadays is, and it shouldn't be an issue, is I think so many people have become kind of, I think the people who love action films, they've become so snobby. Like, well, I want this. And like, you know, everybody's like, it was boring. I'm like, how is it boring? You know, it's got, you know, it's this awesome ensemble of action stars and characters and everything, and they're interacting this whole over-the-top thing, and it's very much in the vein of the movies, of the action films from the 1980s. Obviously, you got Stallone and Schwarzenegger in it, and Dolph Lundgren, and Jason Statham, and all these things, but you know, and it's very much in the vein of that, and that's why that movie is good, is because it's a throwback to the action movies of the 80s, where if we didn't have those films, we would have none of these new ones. We wouldn't have any of these new ones, you know, because everything that comes out nowadays is a hybrid of the kung fu films of the 70s and the action films of the 80s. They took it, ramped it up to 10, and made these films. That's why films like The Raid came out. Films like The Raid and The Raid 2, they came out. It's because of all these films and everything. And I think this film didn't get enough credit. It didn't do too good at the box office, and I really don't know why. Like, it was a lot of fun. It was great. It's funny. Wesley Snipes is in it. He's great. And so is Antonio Banderas.
Well, Banderas gets all the press. I haven't seen the film either, but Banderas, like, it seems like even critics who hated the film mentioned that Banderas is great.
Yeah, he was hilarious in it.
So what I want to ask you is, you know, my hero growing up was Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford's great. It's Harrison Ford being Harrison Ford.
But did he replace Bruce Willis? Is it clearly supposed to be the Bruce Willis character?
It was supposed to be the Bruce Willis character, but Bruce Willis wanted far too much money.
Right. So, but like, can you tell it's pretty much the same character, or did they reinvent it? Because you think
no, because this is kind of, it's like Harrison Ford being kind of that kind of slick, you know that slick CIA operative kind of guy, but it's Harrison Ford's kind of take on it and everything. Like Bruce Willis is a little more, I guess, Bruce Willis about is the best way I can describe it. It was very Bruce Willis. This seemed a lot more. This Harrison Ford kind of made it his own, and it was funny. He was great too in it.
And how big of a part did Schwarzenegger have this time out?
Pretty decent supporting character. It's about the same amount that he had in the last film. So you know, I like that character too. Actually, I would say a little bit more. He does a little bit more in this.
Okay, cool deal. So for whatever reason, people aren't going to see the Expendables, but there's enough people
Drop
like
your
you.
inhibitions. Go see the movie. Like, why does everybody? I think nobody wants to be entertained anymore. Like, if you want to be entertained, go see.
I don't want to be entertained when I see a film. That's the one objective I have. When I go into a film and I put down my money, I don't want to be entertained.
I hope that's sarcasm.
Of course it is.
Yeah, it's just you want to be entertained, go see a movie. It's the same thing with Sin City. Go see, if you want to be entertained, you want to sit there and enjoy yourselves, go see it.
But at the same
Let
time,
your inhibitions at the door.
one thing that I wasn't as crazy about with Sin City 1 was that there's definitely a level of like violence in the film that sort of pulls me out because it's like heightened kind of violence. It's
supposed to be heightened violence.
I know, but it doesn't mean I'm a fan of it. It's just the style of the film. I mean, I liked Sin City, but I didn't love it. Like, I think it's more your kind of film than it's my kind of film.
Well, I'm a big fan of film noir.
Yeah, and I like film noir, but when Robert Mitchum was in film noir, it was nothing like Sin City.
Well, yeah, but this is also, this is supposed to be kind of exaggerated a little bit. That's the whole point. But I mean, Robert Mitchum is has been in some of the most violent films ever.
But most of the violence was off screen. It wasn't so, and it
But
wasn't
it's still,
heightened violence.
the way they imply it in those films, just because they put it in front of your face, it doesn't mean like, this is just, this is showing it. The reason why it was implied back then is they didn't have the technology we did. They had to
Technology and
imply it.
also the censorship
I guarantee
code.
you if they had, what?
And the censorship code, which would prevent them from doing that.
Yeah, they got away with a lot back then though.
Yeah, but did you ever see the Black Hat from 1934?
No, I own it.
Or it's Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi.
Where he cuts off his face at the end?
Pretty much, and it's done in shadow, but that's pretty much the film that made them say, oh my God, time to implement a censorship code.
But if they had the technology, they would have shown it. I guarantee they would have.
Well, before that code came in. Maybe
No, I mean, even then, they would have found a way to show it a little bit. I mean, as soon as they had the ability to do makeup effects like that, you saw them do it left and right.
This was a time period where if you had a couple in bed, you had to have like 1 foot had to be on the floor or something like that. So there was definitely a very strong censorship code
back then.
at that. So when we come back, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to delve into the screenwriting portion of our show, which will be the rest of it. And we have our guest tonight, one of our first of 2 guests, is Paul Guay. Paul had so much to say that from the last episode that he was on in May or April, whatever the hell it was,
May.
that I wanted him to come back. And Joe and him had a lot of stuff to talk about as well. So we're going to hit a commercial break in just a moment. And when we do, we're going to be talking with Mr. Paul Guay. So please come on back in just a moment.
InRavio.com. For over 60 years, Hanson Carpet has put the customer first, providing only the finest quality products and service. And Hanson Carpet is so much more than just carpet. We also carry a wide selection of window blinds and shades, and our licensed and insured technicians can service any of your flooring or window covering needs. Browse our huge selection of laminate, carpet, linoleum, vinyl, and tile. Stop by our showroom today or visit HansonCarpet.com. No matter what your project, Hanson Carpet has got you covered. InRavio.com wants you. InRavio provides the best in TV, film, post-production, and so much more. And we're growing. Right now, we're looking for a team of pros that can join us. So what are you waiting for? We need show hosts, production crew, marketing gurus, sales experts, audio engineers, lighting, visual effects, and camera crews. We want you. Go to InRavio.com/join the team.
Hey, this is Chris and Les Jake, and if InRavio.com spots you at an event wearing this bracelet, they will give you $100.
The Bully News Network, coming soon to InRavio.com, an all-new weekly show highlighting the latest news and information about the epidemic of bullying. Join Scott Hislop as he explores the issues with Dr. Michelle Golland, along with parents, teachers, and school officials, and many others affected by bullying. We'll tell stories together and work toward finding a solution to this rampant problem. The Bully News Network premieres Tuesday, September 9th at 6 p.m. only on InRavio.com.
Transmission of lice occurs from being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Like catching a cold or the flu.
You have guaranteed peace of mind in every bottle of Got Lice because all of our products are completely natural.
And organic.
But strong enough to cover all your lice removal needs while being safe and effective. Our professional technicians are specially trained with our exclusive proven technique to successfully comb out head lice. We come right to your home at your convenience.
Whenever you want us.
We bring everything needed to perform a successful and complete comb out while eliminating your head lice. And we leave you with our exclusive complimentary products to use for the next 10 days following our treatment.
For free.
Our technicians also check all family members who have been exposed to lice. Please visit us on our website today at gotlice.co or feel free to call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 646-257-0121.
Hi, this is Tony.
And I'm Dan, and you're watching
Dear Dad.
Oh, wait, you're not watching it yet, but you should be every Thursday at our new time from
7 to 8.
That's the new time. Dear Dad on InRavio.com.
Only InRavio.com.
Where else could it be? Tune in.
On the internet.
The world of advertising has changed. Radio, TV, and newspaper revenues have declined drastically. Why? Because businesses have realized that advertising return on investment isn't what it used to be. So what can we do about it? Well, that's easy. Advertise online. Own a local restaurant, real estate agency, or even a national retail chain? Whatever your business, InRavio can get your message out there. And we can do it at a fraction of the cost. Call today and see the difference for yourself. This isn't TV. This isn't radio. This is InRavio.com. InRavio.com.
Welcome back. We've got one of the greatest guests we've ever had in the history of Nerdgasm on the line with us right now, so let's patch him through, because he has lots to say. Hey, Paul, how are you?
Hi, Dave. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Paul.
Now, this is the man who played my screenwriting teacher in Caesar Nada's Deadly Xmas, who will be returning to Caesar Nada's Paranormal Halloween in an extended part. And actually, I was just looking over your screenwriting notes that you gave me. So the guy who plays my screenwriting teacher in the film gave me screenwriting notes on my screenplay.
Yeah, I've been training with an acting coach so I can pull off the role better this time.
Right. You weren't enough of a jerk last time. We got to
That's
really,
right.
pump up the jerk factor.
Just take a look at Dave and go from there.
It's a real challenge.
Yeah.
I am known as one of the nicest guys in the B film industry.
I know, it's called humor.
Season. So now, Paul, I've got a series of questions for you.
Okay.
Joe and I will be, probing you, if you don't mind. And so.
What? No, I mind. I don't want to probe anybody.
No, I mean mentally
Can we just ask him
probing.
questions?
Okay. So now, my first question for you, Paul, is what films do you feel influenced you the most as you were growing up?
I'm not sure what influenced me, but the films that I was in love with were 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I have yet to see a better film to this day. Harold and Maude.
Harold and Maude is a great film.
I just love that film. The Wizard of Oz. And I grew up on the Universal horror films, Frankenstein, Dracula, The Wolfman, Invisible Man, Creature, Mummy, films like that.
Awesome.
And as I got older, I guess Woody Allen and Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
So slightly on the esoteric side, slightly on the fantasy side. These are all influences, and you could see it in your work.
I wish.
Well, the man who wrote Liar, Liar definitely has some legs to stand on there.
You can see Frankenstein in that.
So now, what then made you decide to get into screenwriting?
I always loved movies. For me, it was always the greatest possible art form, so I was interested as a kid in acting and in writing. I started out writing poems and short stories and lyrics and plays, and eventually screenplays seemed the logical place to go. So that was it.
Do you remember your first screenplay?
Pardon me, do I remember it?
Yeah, do you remember the first screenplay that you wrote, feature length?
I do, yes. I was hired by a producer to rewrite a treatment that had been written by a prominent screenwriter that she wasn't really happy with. So I flew to Germany to meet with her and her boyfriend, who was the director of the film, and spent a week or two over there rewriting it.
In Germany?
In Germany.
Awesome.
How did you get the gig?
He's that good.
We had worked for the same company. I worked for a film production and distribution company for 5 years in Los Angeles, and she was part of our French bureau, our Paris bureau or whatever. And then she had a boyfriend in Germany, so it gets weird.
It's pretty weird to begin with, let's be honest.
Europe is basically one large country anyway. I think we know that.
Well, now with the euro in place, certainly.
Yeah.
So now, in addition to your work on Liar Liar, you also received writing credits on the feature film adaptation of The Little Rascals and Heartbreakers.
I did.
How would you describe the writing process of those films, and how much of your work ended up in those?
Little Rascals was really interesting because I hadn't watched The Rascals growing up. I was a Three Stooges fan, but I totally missed Our Gang. So when we got the pitch, I went out and I rented a bunch of what we used to call VHS videos, and I saw a bunch of the short subjects. And my partner and I went in and we pitched to the director, Penelope Spheris, and she liked our pitch, but she hadn't heard of us as a team before. So she wound up hiring a couple of people that she'd worked with on other projects. And they turned in a draft of the script, and for whatever reason, Universal didn't like it, so they came back to us and said, would you pitch again? So we did a second pitch for the Little Rascals, and they hired us, and they said, our rights to the characters are about to expire, so you've got 12 days to write the first draft of the screenplay.
Oh, lovely.
Oh, God.
Yeah, usually you get 12 weeks, we got 12 days. So they put us up in an office on the Universal lot that was right next to Penelope's. So we'd show up at 9 in the morning, we'd leave at 5 or 6 at night, and we would work just the whole day through. And at the end of the day, we'd give our pages to Penelope. And the next day we'd give them back, and she would scrawl, this is shit, across them or whatever. But it was great. It was great because nobody had any time really to interfere and slow things down because they actually had to make the movie. You know, there was a real date that they had to start by. So there was an impetus to move forward. And Penelope was very honest. She either liked something or she didn't. She was very clear, which is extremely rare.
That's got to be a good thing to have, though.
It's a great
there's
thing
no
to have.
wishy-washiness. It's just, do you like this? No, change it.
Yeah, you can drown in people's confusing notes, and people are often afraid to just say, no, this is what I want. They kind of, they waste time, basically. And there was no time to waste. So we got her feedback, and we wrote the script. It was a very pleasant experience. And the script that was filmed was almost literally word for word our screenplay. Partially, probably, because they didn't have a lot of time to improve it.
I mean, that's got to be rare, though.
Because they seemed to like the script at the time.
And what do you think of the film? As you look back, you can be honest. It's just us watching.
I hope not.
I like the screenplay. I think there are some issues with pacing and with editing in the film. There was a scene that my partner and I wrote in which Alfalfa and Spanky, who have been best friends for life, break apart because of Alfalfa's love for Darla, and then they come back together. And that was an actually moving moment in the script, we thought. And it was filmed, and we saw it as filmed, and it really worked. But I guess to keep the running time down, they did a lot of editing on the film, and that was one of the moments that was lost. So I always kind of missed that.
Well, I'm going to ask you, what pet peeves do you have with Hollywood films? Your average Hollywood film, in terms of things that are now commonplace that just irk you.
In the 70s and 80s, it would have been car chases, where I'm supposed to care viscerally about what's going on when I don't care about the characters whatsoever. And now it's CGI, because when you can do anything,
although that's not
nothing is
so much a
impressive.
screenwriting issue, though. From a
screenwriting issues. Not creating characters that I care about. I mean, that's the basic thing. It's the characters tend to be generic and formulaic and unsurprising.
How much of that would you say is studio interference?
It's partly the writer's fault for writing those characters, and it's partly the executives for encouraging that, and it's partly audience members for going to see films with characters that I don't care about, for example.
Now,
but it's not like we're in a really bad period of screenwriting. These things just they come and they go.
Well, it's also we live in an era of the blockbuster.
We do very much so.
It's like although I'm not trying to call anybody out, but a lot of the Michael Bay films that are coming out are just acting-wise and character-wise awful. Visually amazing, but
I'm not trying to call anybody out, but Michael Bay.
Right.
Now,
right.
we're about to toss the interview over to Joe, who's got a few questions for you.
I can't stop breathing into the mic.
But I'm breathing into the mic?
No, you're fine.
So now,
Take off the hat.
Wrestling.
Yes.
Wrestling. How exactly did you find yourself involved?
I discovered professional wrestling when I was 12, and I was a young 12-year-old, and I knew intellectually that it was fake, that the outcomes were predetermined, but emotionally I completely invested in the good guys and the bad guys. And I was very much into superheroes.
What did you grow up watching with the wrestling? What did you grow up watching? If you don't, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, please do. I grew up in San Francisco. The promoter was Roy Shire, and the stars in our promotion were Ray Stevens and Pat Patterson and Rocky Johnson and Peter Maivia.
Yep, High Chief.
Yeah.
That's a great. That had to be one of the best eras to watch and be involved in wrestling.
I had no idea how lucky I was. The storylines were presented as logically as possible within the framework of professional wrestling, so you could suspend your disbelief. You could actually get emotionally engaged in the stories that were being told. Fantastic time.
Yeah, definitely fantastic time. What so you go from that, you go from growing up and watching it, and now you how did you get the chance to, even though it was brief, to write for WWE?
I had blackmail photos that I used on Stephanie McMahon. I showed her in compromising positions and also with bad grammar, spelling, and punctuation on her memos. No, I pitched a wrestling project to WWE Films, as I think it was called at that time.
It still is. I think they still have that company.
Yeah, I think it's now WWE Studios or whatever. And the gentleman to whom I had Kurt Angle attached to the pitch. He was the guy who won the gold medal as an Olympic
I know
wrestler.
Kurt Angle.
And became a fantastic professional wrestler.
Still is.
And I did the pitch, and the head of the studio listened to it, and he was very nice, and he said, but of course, we're not going to make any wrestling films. And I thought, how stupid of me to go to WWE and have the nerve, the ignorance to pitch a wrestling film.
Is this pre Mickey Rourke, the wrestler?
It was like a year or two before that.
That movie was huge too.
Yeah. So then, based on my pitch, he said Stephanie McMahon, who headed up the creative department for WWE, they're looking for writers because the ratings for Raw and SmackDown weren't great at that time. Would you be interested? And I said, sure.
What year was this, if you don't mind me asking? What year?
This is 2002.
Oh, yeah. The pay-per-views are doing well, but the TV was falling a little flat at the time. They were coming off of the Attitude Era. It was the tail end of that.
Right, yeah, it was the butt end. So they flew me out to Connecticut, and I met with Stephanie, and I pitched her what I would do. And she said, all right, I want you to stay overnight, and I want you to meet with everybody tomorrow and pitch them what you pitched me. So the next day I go in.
She liked the idea, though? Did she like what you pitched?
Yeah, she liked my approach.
Okay.
And I met with, there was a table filled with people like Vince and Triple H and Paul Heyman and Doc Hendricks, a.k.a. Michael P.S.
Michael Hayes, the Freebirds.
Yeah, and Brian Gewirtz.
Yep.
And Vince shakes my hand, and he sits down, he pulls out a yellow legal pad, and he says, shoot, or go, or something.
Yeah.
So I talked for 15 or 20 minutes about what I would do if I were the booker, if I had the pencil, how I would change it. And Vince asked for comments from everybody around the table. Nobody said anything because, of course, they wanted to know what Vince had to say.
Okay.
And they walked me out of the room, and Stephanie said that went great, and they offered me the job.
Nice. I mean, great.
Yeah.
So if you mind me asking, what was your pitch at the time? What was your kind of grand scheme to kind of change what they were doing at the time?
Basically, my idea was clothing optional. I thought everybody was wearing too many clothes, like trunks and things like that. I thought if we could just get back to Greco-Roman nudity, that would be the best approach for WWE.
Nothing. Talk about ratings. That would have been.
There you go. No,
Did you see this thing? They're just wrestling naked.
That's right. No, I said take your false sport, your faux sport, seriously. Make it easy for people to invest emotionally by not making fun of the storylines. Make the titles really important.
Kind of bring it down, not dumb it down, but bring it back down to the street level, if you will.
Right, make it look a little bit more like MMA in terms of we actually invest in winners and losers, and it matters who's going to win and lose. We know
Which is something they used to do, too. They used to do that. It used to matter. One of my biggest complaints about the industry now, and I grew up and still am a massive wrestling fan, and one of the things I loved, and they did this right through the Attitude Era. Like, wins and losses mattered. They used to matter. They don't matter anymore.
Well, let me ask you guys something. This applies to both of you. When would you consider the worst period of wrestling? When was it the fakest? When did people seem not to take it seriously?
Early 90s, the very early 90s.
So what era was that like?
Somewhere around there. Vince McMahon is great at a lot of things, and there's no question that financially he's by far the most successful promoter in the history of wrestling.
Easily.
Yeah, but at the same time, he has an approach to wrestling that's a little bit different, that's significantly different from what I grew up on.
It's a little dated, too, because some of the stuff that he does is a little too old school. Mm-hmm. You know? There's a great interview with Mick Foley on I was watching it recently, where he was talking about right before the Attitude Era started, all the wrestlers were in a room, and he actually said, I confess, I may not be the one. And this was in like 96, where he said, I confess, I may not know the right things to keep this sport popular right now. And that was the first time he opened up the floor to the wrestlers. So, you have to give him credit where credit's due on that, but I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
That some of the things he does is a little too much, or it doesn't resonate. Although I do also admit that Vince McMahon as a character is one of the greatest characters to ever come out of the wrestling world.
He's a fantastic character.
Would you say he's the Don
He plays
King?
Mr. McMahon so well.
Oh, yeah.
The Don King of wrestling?
No, he's the Lex Luthor of wrestling. He's easily the Lex Luthor of wrestling. He's the biggest supervillain in the history of the sport. More so than even when Dusty Rhodes was a heel for a little bit and doing he's a legit, everybody wants to beat up their boss, but so your whole pitch was to basically take it a little more seriously, and something they did. They did that in the Attitude Era, where it was taken very seriously, and they didn't have any kind of gimmick storylines. It was, it was a different time because they were competing with WCW, but it's still that's what I think the problem is. There's no competition anymore. If
that's a real problem. When I came in, they were pitching they had just done the first week of the Katie Vick storyline.
Oh, with Kane?
Yes.
That was something that should have never happened.
Yeah, in which Kane apparently, as a teenager, was driving with his girlfriend Katie Vick when a rodent appeared in the road, and he steered off the road and accidentally killed her, which led to her body in a funeral home being abused by Triple H, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, it was something that just didn't. Even I was like, and I'll enjoy some stupid storylines, but I was like, this is too much. Because even they've done stuff like that before and made it work. Like there was a storyline with the Big Boss Man and the Big Show, where he actually showed up to the Big Show's father's funeral. That worked for me, but this was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it was just like, how did this, somebody approved this?
Right.
Yeah. It was they tried to be visceral and everything with it, and it just came off dumb.
At some point, you've got to believe the stories that are being told in the ring. And if what's being told outside of the ring is so hilariously melodramatic, you can no longer believe what's happening in the ring.
Yeah, well, I applaud you for... So what happened? What was the ultimate... you were there for a month, so just talk me through that month. That'll pretty much... I really want to know.
Yeah, I went to the meetings, and I was told that if things worked out, I might wind up as the head writer of one of the two shows. And I found out that they were thinking of SmackDown, which was run by Paul Heyman, which I thought was hilarious that they would ever think that anybody, especially me, would replace Heyman, because Heyman's one of the great wrestling minds ever.
Yeah.
And SmackDown was being run far better than Raw was at that point in terms of
that time.
credibility and everything.
Because of Paul Heyman.
Pardon me?
Because of Paul Heyman was running SmackDown, and he's a genius. Contained but he's a genius. So.
Yeah. So after a month, it became clear that everything that I had pitched, they wanted to do the exact opposite, which is, of course, their prerogative. So during one of the pay-per-views, I walked and talked with Stephanie, and I said, I don't think it's working out. I wish you guys all the luck in the world. You've got a fantastic company, but I don't see how I can help you guys do what you want to do. So I left.
Notice I've had nothing to offer this conversation because
I'd like to end this on one note. This is my last question. Do you still watch wrestling?
I do. Yeah.
Actively? My last question will be this: number one, who do you like now in with what they're doing now, and is there anything that you would do differently right now?
Brock Lesnar is fantastic.
You're a Lesnar fan. Rare find with Lesnar nowadays. A lot of people I know don't like him.
Oh my gosh. The guy, when I first saw him in 2002, I was sitting behind his seat on a plane, and he was talking to another wrestler about a baby that I guess Sable had just had, and he was talking about changing the diapers of the baby, and I was just imagining these huge, enormous hands changing a baby's diaper.
Yeah, I understand.
The guy has such athletic credibility.
Definitely.
It looks like a real fight, and to a large extent, wrestling should be larger than MMA, but it should incorporate the moves of MMA. We should believe that what seems to be happening is really happening. He makes me believe it.
Yeah. Okay. So what would you, and what was the last thing, what would you do differently right now? Is there anything you would do differently?
I would take away the quotation marks that Vince McMahon has put around the sport. I would take away a lot of the irony. I would get back to good guys that we love and bad guys that we hate.
That's why Punk left. That's why CM Punk left. And I was a huge Punk fan, and I know for a fact that's why he left, because he wasn't. They didn't. I mean, the man was one of the greatest wrestlers they ever had, and he never mainlined WrestleMania, ever. Yeah. And it's a shame. And I agree. I think the irony needs to stop. It needs to be. Really, if they just did what you said you would do in 2001, make it matter more, it would be. Quite frankly, great. The best feud they had. The Dean Ambrose thing is the best thing got going on right now because you believe it because it's
It's absolutely great. It's organic. It's believable, and those guys can really go.
Paul, we gotta end the interview sadly, but I have to come out to California and talk wrestling with you for a couple hours.
I'd love to.
There's this thing called the phone. You can give him a call.
You have a great mind about it. I would like to say, you have a great mind about it. And I think it's a real shame that you never really got a longer job there because I think you would have done great things.
You're very kind, and thank you very much. And thanks for having me on. It's been a blast.
Absolutely, absolutely. Unfortunately, I stopped paying attention to wrestling back in the King Kong Bundy era.
The 80s?
So on that note, let's head out to commercial. When we come back, we're going to be joined by actor, screenwriter, and Professor Christopher Bradley. So we have a lot to talk about. Catch everybody soon.
Bye, Paul.
Bye, Paul.
InRavio.com. The world of advertising has changed. Radio, TV, and newspaper revenues have declined drastically. Why? Because businesses have realized that advertising return on investment isn't what it used to be. So what can we do about it? Well, that's easy. Advertise online. Own a local restaurant, real estate agency, or even a national retail chain? Whatever your business, InRavio can get your message out there, and we can do it at a fraction of the cost. Call today and see the difference for yourself. This isn't TV. This isn't radio. This is InRavio.com. The Bully News Network, coming soon to InRavio.com, an all-new weekly show highlighting the latest news and information about the epidemic of bullying. Join Scott Hislop as he explores the issues with Dr. Michelle Golland, along with parents, teachers, and school officials, and many others affected by bullying. We'll tell stories together and work toward finding a solution to this rampant problem. The Bully News Network premieres Tuesday, September 9th at 6 p.m. only on InRavio.com. InRavio.com wants you. InRavio provides the best in TV, film, post-production, and so much more. And we're growing. Right now, we're looking for a team of pros that can join us. So what are you waiting for? We need show hosts, production crew, marketing gurus, sales experts, audio engineers, lighting, visual effects, and camera crews. We want you. Go to InRavio.com/join the team. For over 60 years, Hanson Carpet has put the customer first, providing only the finest quality products and service. And Hanson Carpet is so much more than just carpet. We also carry a wide selection of window blinds and shades, and our licensed and insured technicians can service any of your flooring or window covering needs. Browse our huge selection of laminate, carpet, linoleum, vinyl, and tile. Stop by our showroom today or visit hansoncarpet.com. No matter what your project, Hanson Carpet has got you covered. InRavio.com.
Matt bought me a beer. This is awesome. I love this place.
Welcome back to Nerdgasm. Our second guest tonight is a man of many hats because I met him as an actor.
Sure
I met
is.
him as an actor of on one of the Gunsmoke television movies.
I love those movies.
And I had recognized him from other movies. I recognized him from The Wraith, and I recognized him from Iron Eagle.
Wait, was The Wraith the one with Charlie Sheen?
Yeah,
It was a quality flick, man. Let me tell you what.
Pre-dead Charlie Sheen. Pre-dead Charlie Sheen we're talking about. And he was in Waxwork, and a whole series of genre films. He always excelled. Maybe not so much in Sundown, Vampire in Retreat, but otherwise he always excelled. Oh, if you can only see his face right now.
I have
but
a VHS of that
movie. He's a great actor and a great writer and a great friend. And please welcome Christopher Bradley.
Hi there.
So now, Christopher, you are teaching screenwriting at a university now?
I teach screenwriting and film history at Arizona State University.
Really?
So how did you wind up going from acting to screenwriting?
Well, I had done a couple of low-budget action movies for the notorious Menachem Golan.
Rest in peace.
Which ones did you do?
Rest in peace.
Just died. His assistant summed it up very well for me. She said, I love Menachem. I love working for Menachem. It's the best job I've ever had in my life. I would never let anyone I love work for Menachem. He was like a 5-year-old on the set. He was having so much fun. I just remember we had this bloody shootout, and I just remember he grabbed the bucket of blood from one of the set people and started throwing it all over the place.
No way.
He had a really infectious
Energy?
enthusiasm for film that made working with him really fun. So I'd done a couple of movies for him. We actually shot them in Moscow.
Hit the Dutchman and Killer Instinct. I've seen both of these films several times.
I have a VHS.
Killer Instinct and Hit the Dutchman.
Right.
And Killer Instinct actually had Janusz Kaminski as our cinematographer, who is now Steven Spielberg's cinematographer. And
You
that
gotta
was
start
another
somewhere.
really fascinating part of doing that job. Was he was amazing. Just what he was able to pull together visually with almost no time and certainly no money or resources.
Those are some of the best cinematographers, though, the people who can do so much with nothing.
Yeah, I just remember him like pulling some Venetian blinds off the set and sticking it in front of a light and yelling at somebody to go get him a ceiling fan off another set and putting that, putting another light above us. It took like maybe 5 minutes, and he gave the scene this complete like film noir feel.
Awesome.
In like 2 seconds. But anyway, I'm totally off track. But so I had done a couple of these low budget films for Menachem, and he told me, if you, he said, I really liked working with you, and if you find me a script, I'll star you in it. So that was really exciting to me, and I started looking for a script, and I couldn't find anything I liked. And I thought, well, I'll write something. I'll write a script. So I started writing, and I couldn't force myself to write the kind of movie that Menachem makes.
What movie?
I'm writing the kind of film I like. And I went into just this fever of writing, and I was doing it like 10, 12 hours a day. In about 30 days, I'd written a screenplay. By the time I finished it, though, Menachem had gone out of business again.
Again.
But I showed the script to a few people, and they said, this is really good writing, but it's too dark. It's too, it was about a kid having religious visions. They said it's too dark. It's about religion. No one wants this. And I tossed it in a drawer and forgot about it. And then about 6 months later, I got a phone call out of nowhere from somebody saying, is this script still available? And I said yes, and they optioned it, a little company, and they went out of business before they made it. But it put it in my head, like, if I could write a screenplay that could get optioned without any training, maybe I should go back to school.
But at the same time, you put two companies out of business, Menachem Golan, Canon Big 21st Century Film, and this other company. That had to do something to your ego. Now, I could easily imagine you as the replacement for Chuck Norris in those mission and action films that Menachem Golan was producing.
I love those movies.
Yeah. That was a company. They had their hands in everything.
Yeah, I know.
The company, Superman films and beyond. Actually, wait a minute, damn good Superman.
They had the Spider-Man franchise too for a long time.
Yeah. We were actually speaking with one of the screenwriters for that Spider-Man script, and the restrictions and the handcuffs that they put on you is pretty immeasurable.
The Menachem.
Yeah, the Menachem Spider-Man's like, okay, you can't use the supervillains. You can use Spider-Man sort of. So even if they made it, it would have been a disaster.
I remember this. Yeah, they had so many restrictions.
Yeah. So now, what do you think is a great example of a Hollywood blockbuster screenplay? Because plenty of people always criticize Hollywood films for having bad screenplays, but there are plenty of also Hollywood films that get it right in terms of what the story is. So what do you feel are some examples of that?
There have actually been two recently. I thought that The Avengers was really good.
Yes, it was.
Actually, Iron Man 3 I thought was really good.
Yes,
and the most recent one, I thought Guardians of the Galaxy was really good.
Tremendous film.
What's that?
It was a tremendous film. I'm glad you agree.
And one of the things that I loved particularly about Guardians of the Galaxy, is that a lot of people don't want to think politically about film, and probably more than any other art form, film is political. But the Batman movies, the communication of the Batman movies is pretty much democracy doesn't work, and your only two choices in the world are terrorism, that is the Joker or Bane, and a wealthy fascist with tons of super expensive weapons. And that just drives me crazy. It's like those aren't the two choices in the world, and putting America is sort of steeping in that message all the time that democracy doesn't work, and I simply don't believe that. And you look at something like Guardians of the Galaxy, and you have you have a film where you have people, a very disparate group of people. This girl with green skin, the raccoon, the huge tattooed guy, and our hero, who don't necessarily like each other, who have
They don't really like each other until the last 20 minutes of the movies when they really start
cooperating together and sharing power in order to take power away from this he's
a dictator
or aspiring fascists.
Exactly.
So I really, and I like Iron Man, that franchise. His Iron Man's arrogance, like his repeated arrogance, and he's arrogant and keeps getting his ass kicked, and it's funny and wonderful, and Robert Downey Jr. is really charming.
Especially in the third one, because they delved into him as the man.
Yes.
Shane Black.
Yeah, the reteaming of Shane Black and Robert Downey Jr. from Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which I love it as a screenplay. I think, in my opinion, I'm going to be in the minority, that I think Kiss Kiss Bang Bang goes further than Pulp Fiction does in terms of satire, in terms of accomplishing that type of film. I personally like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang better than Pulp Fiction, and I think that, it's one of the few times in Iron Man 3 where you presented a kid character that didn't feel so obligatory and offered something to it and humanized the character in a very real kind of way when they showed that. So we're on the same page with that. Now, as a screenwriting teacher.
Tell us about Gunsmoke.
No. As a screenwriting teacher, what is the most common problems you see amongst students?
With my students, it's usually, and this actually was a problem in Guardians of the Galaxy, but I forgave it because it had so much good stuff in it.
Yes, it
but
did.
Probably the biggest problem is exposition without conflict, where I'll give you the example I give my students is like why so many 1950s science fiction movies are so bad. It's because it's like, well, golly, Mr. Science, how are we going to kill the giant praying mantis? Well, Billy, a giant praying mantis has an exoskeleton 3 feet thick. It needs a special bullet that will pierce the exoskeleton, and by then you're just asleep, you're bored.
In other words, you would have given Phantom Menace an F in your class.
Oh, yes.
George Lucas fails. I've been waiting to hear that all my life.
In particular with that one, yeah.
In particular, all three new ones.
Yeah.
Is a scene where you've got Major Badass and he's got his, cannon and he's going to shoot this, shoot at the giant praying mantis. And Mr. Science is like, no, don't fire that. And if that won't go through its exoskeleton, it's 3 feet thick. You're just going to make it mad and it'll destroy the town. Shut up. I know what I'm doing. Pulls the trigger.
I know exactly what moment in Guardians you're referring to now. I figured, but I agree with that. I think that's a good point.
In that case, you're revealing the information, but you're doing it through conflict rather than somebody just
sitting there telling stupid exposition that nobody could care about.
So in Guardians of the Galaxy, there is a long section where they're explaining who people are. It didn't go on long enough that it bugged me enough to certainly. I don't know if anything could have made me dislike that movie. It was just so charming and
Chris Pratt as the lead was just he captured everybody's hearts.
A great casting choice. I mean, he was Robert Downey Jr. has that same kind of charm. But he just is like all four of those characters were just so easy to hang out with, and he's just got like old-fashioned movie star screen presence. He's just great.
Well, let me ask you this: now you're on production of a new short, or you're just entering post-production on a new short. I believe it's called The Trigger. And, it's a film. It's a feature film, right? Yes. And so now walk us through the process of writing a screenplay and then translating said screenplay.
Well, I had actually, before I took that on, I had I made a couple of animated shorts first. Then I wrote and acted in one where and kind of watched the director and producer. I watched what they did so that I would know what to do when it was my turn. And then I wrote and directed, but did not act in a short film. And then worked with a producer putting that together. So I knew basically what the process was as far as, and really what the process is it's a lot of delegating. You can't do everything. Control freaks just crash and burn. You have to. It's almost like you tell the costumer something, and all of a sudden your arm becomes 10 feet long because all the information they have about costuming that you can't possibly know, all of a sudden they're bringing you costumes that tell the story. You have an art director who's suddenly bringing you furniture, bringing you colors, bringing you design choices. I don't know anything about like interior design. I don't know anything about any of that stuff.
Or color scheme,
and
or what's
suddenly
hot.
I'm looking at a room, an empty room suddenly transformed into a teenage girl's bedroom. I wouldn't know how to do that. I also wouldn't have the time or the energy to do it with my duties. So it's a lot of, first of all, finding the right people. And on this film, I initially found 3 people, my first AD, Phil Click, my cinematographer, Aidan Chaperoni, and my producer, Brian Keifling. All 3 of them have such good energy, and everybody they brought in had that same good energy. There was no friction on the set, and there was a lot to have friction about. We had a lot of, my art director did cry a few times.
Art directors always cry.
That's a perfect place to close it out because we're hitting the top of the hour.
Don't close it out. I like this guy. Come on.
So yeah. We're gonna have to continue this conversation again. But Chris, you are the perfect guest. You're a great guest. I'm so happy with the both of you tonight.
I love that you love Guardians, by the way. Thank you very much.
we gotta connect very soon. Thank you so much for being part of our program.
And I'm glad I'm still in touch with you, Dave. Dave was an extra on one of the Gunsmoke movies, and he has no fear of just walking up and talking to people, and I'm so glad you did.
Yeah, I heard that's his problem sometimes.
Yeah, I was 18 years old when I saw you. I'm like, I'm going to talk to that guy. I know him from his movies.
I want to talk to that guy. Maybe he'll make me famous.
No, that's not what I'm thinking. And then to this day, that's exactly that's why we're still in touch. All right, love you, brother. So we're going to wrap up.
Pleasure talking to you, man. I hope I run into you one day.
Yeah. We're going to wrap up this edition of Nerdgasm. This has been our 42nd episode, and that represents 1 year on the air, starting next week. So for the month of September, we're going to be dealing with the best of Nerdgasm. So get ready for 4 of the best episodes starting next week with
They're all with me. Isn't that a coincidence?
With our Nerd News Girl special. All of our Nerd News Girls back-to-back, a 1 hour-long episode, followed with the best of interviews and the best of it all. So get ready. Vote in the chat room for your favorite Nerd News Girl next week. We'll see you soon.
Stock footage galore. Tune in.
InReview.com